Victor Hayes had served the royal family for 11 years, and in that time he had learned to read silence better than words. He stood at his post near the East Gallery, posture perfect, eyes scanning the morning event where dignitaries gathered for a charitable foundation announcement. Nothing appeared unusual. Conversations flowed. Camera flashes lit the room in bursts. Protocol moved forward like clockwork. Then Prince Oliver crossed the marble floor toward him. The boy was 8 years old, composed beyond his years, but something in his stride felt wrong. Victor noticed the tension in the child's shoulders, the way his fingers gripped each other behind his back. The prince stopped 3 feet away and spoke quietly enough that no one else could hear. "I need to tell you something important." Victor didn't move. He kept his gaze forward, but angled his head slightly. "Go ahead, Your Highness. Last night I couldn't sleep. I went to get water from the kitchen hall. I heard 2 men talking near the back stairwell." The boy's voice trembled but didn't break. "They were talking about my father. About tonight's dinner, they said something about the service and making sure the main detail gets distracted." Victor's pulse remained steady, but his mind accelerated. Children overhear things. They misunderstand conversations. They imagine threats that don't exist. But Prince Oliver wasn't prone to dramatics. He wasn't seeking attention. The fear in his eyes was genuine. "Did you see these men?" Victor asked, still facing forward. "Only their backs. One wore kitchen whites. The other had a maintenance uniform. Specific details. Locations? Timing?" This wasn't a vague story. Victor had 2 options. Report through his chain of command, which meant filling out an incident form, waiting for his supervisor to assess credibility, then passing it upward through layers of bureaucracy. By the time it reached someone with authority to act, hours would pass. Or he could break protocol entirely and approach Prince William directly, risking his career on the word of a child. Across the gallery, Prince William stood among a cluster of guests, listening to a foundation director explain upcoming projects. His posture was relaxed, his attention divided between the speaker and the room. Victor looked down at Prince Oliver. "Stay close to your mother. Don't mention this to anyone else." The boy nodded and walked away, glancing back once with an expression that carried both hope and doubt. Victor's hand moved to his side, fingers forming a subtle signal. It was a gesture used only in critical situations, a silent code that meant urgent private communication required. He held it for 3 seconds, then returned his hand to rest. Prince William's gaze shifted. It took him less than 2 seconds to locate Victor across the room. Their eyes met. The prince didn't change expression, but Victor saw the acknowledgement, the question, the readiness. Victor had made his choice. Prince William excused himself from the conversation with practiced ease, offering a polite smile and a promise to continue the discussion later. He moved through the gallery without hurry, stopping briefly to greet 2 ambassadors before angling toward the corridor where Victor now stood. To anyone watching, it appeared coincidental. Natural. But Victor knew better. The prince reached the doorway and gestured subtly for Victor to follow. They walked 15 paces down a side hallway lined with historical portraits before Prince William stopped and turned. His expression remained calm, but his focus sharpened. "You used the priority signal. What happened?" Victor kept his voice low and clear. "Your Highness, your son approached me moments ago with information he believes indicates a threat. He overheard 2 palace staff members late last night discussing tonight's state dinner. Specifically, they mentioned timing related to the service and creating a distraction for the main security detail." Prince William's face didn't change, but something shifted in his posture. Which staff members? He didn't see their faces. One wore kitchen whites, the other had maintenance clothing. They were near the back stairwell off the kitchen hall. What exact words did he hear? Victor recited them precisely. Something about the service and making sure the main detail gets distracted. Those were the phrases he remembered most clearly. Prince William absorbed this without visible reaction. He didn't dismiss it. He didn't question whether a child might be mistaken. He processed the information like the threat assessment it potentially was. Where is Oliver now? With his mother in the gallery. I told him to stay close to her and not mention this to anyone else. Bring him to the North Study. Immediately, but without drawing attention, I'll meet you there in 2 minutes. Victor moved back toward the gallery while Prince William pulled out his phone and made a call. The conversation was brief, spoken in a tone too quiet for Victor to hear, but the prince's hand gestures suggested instructions being given. Victor located Prince Oliver standing near his mother, who was engaged in conversation with a museum curator. The boy's eyes found Victor instantly, searching for reassurance or dismissal. Victor approached and leaned toward the child's mother with appropriate deference. "Pardon the interruption, ma'am. His Highness has requested a brief word with Prince Oliver in the North Study." She glanced at her son with mild curiosity, but nodded. "Of course." Victor and Oliver walked together through the corridors. The boy's hands were still clasped behind his back, knuckles white from pressure. "Did you tell my father?" Oliver asked quietly. "I did. Does he believe me? He's taking it seriously." They reached the North Study, a smaller room used for private family meetings. Prince William arrived seconds later and closed the door behind him. He knelt to his son's eye level, placing one hand on the boy's shoulder. "Tell me everything you heard. Don't leave anything out, even if it seems small." Oliver took a breath and began. "I woke up around midnight because I was thirsty. I went down the back stairs toward the kitchen hall. When I got close to the stairwell near the service entrance, I heard voices. 2 men. They were talking low, but I could hear them clearly. 'What did they say?' One of them said, 'Everything's set for the dinner service.' The other one said, 'You handle your part. I'll make sure the main detail is busy elsewhere.' Then the first one said something about timing being critical and not missing the window. Prince William's expression remained controlled. 'Did they say anything else?' The second man said, 'After this, we're done. Clean break.' Then I heard footsteps coming toward the stairs, so I ran back up before they saw me." "You did exactly right." Prince William stood and pulled out his phone again. He typed a message, sent it, then looked at Victor. "You stay with him. Don't let him out of your sight until I tell you otherwise." The door opened. A woman in a dark suit entered without knocking. She was in her mid-40s, gray streaks in her hair pulled back tightly, eyes sharp and assessing. "Claire Donovan, head of internal palace security." Prince William gestured toward Oliver. "He needs to repeat what he just told me. Record it." Claire sat across from the boy and pulled out a small digital recorder. Her voice was firm but not unkind. "Start from the beginning. Tell me everything." Oliver repeated the story with remarkable consistency. Claire asked clarifying questions about the voices, the time, the exact location. When the boy finished, she turned off the recorder and looked at Prince William. "I'll pull staff schedules for last night and cross-reference anyone assigned to kitchen or maintenance who had late shifts. We'll have names within 20 minutes. Prince William nodded. "The dinner proceeds as planned. No changes to the schedule, no visible alerts. If this is real, I don't want anyone knowing we're aware." Claire stood. "Understood? I'll report back within the hour." She left, and Prince William knelt again beside his son. "You may have just prevented something very bad, but now you need to go back to the gallery and act like everything is normal. Can you do that?" Oliver nodded, though his hand still trembled slightly. Victor escorted the boy back toward the public areas, aware that invisible gears were now turning throughout the palace, and that tonight's state dinner had just become something far more dangerous than a formal event. Claire Donovan moved through the palace corridors with purpose, but without alarm. She reached her office in the security wing and immediately pulled up the digital staff scheduling system. Her fingers moved across the keyboard, filtering for personnel assigned to kitchen or maintenance duties between the hours of 11 p.m. and 2 a.m. The previous night, 7 names appeared. She narrowed the search to individuals working near the kitchen hall or service corridors. 2 names remained: Eric Lawson, catering supervisor hired 6 weeks ago; Greg Torres, maintenance technician employed for 4 months. Claire opened their personnel files side by side on her screen. Eric's background check had cleared through standard protocols. Previous employment at 3 high-end hotels, culinary training from a respected institution, references verified. Greg's file showed similar legitimacy. Licensed electrician, former military service, clean record. Nothing obvious. Nothing that would raise immediate flags. But something about the timing bothered her. Both were recent hires. Both had requested specific shift assignments for tonight's state dinner. She picked up her phone and called her deputy. Run deep background on Eric Lawson and Greg Torres. Financials, associates, travel history for the past year. I need it fast. How fast? 30 minutes. She ended the call and walked to a secure conference room 3 doors down. Prince William arrived moments later, closing the door behind him. 2 possibles, Claire said, turning her laptop screen toward him. Eric Lawson and Greg Torres. Both fit the timeline and location Prince Oliver described. Both are scheduled to work tonight's dinner. Prince William studied the photographs and files. What's your assessment? Too early to say definitively, but the pattern concerns me. Recent hires, specific shift requests, access to critical areas during the exact time frame we're worried about. Can we remove them from duty without alerting anyone else? Claire considered this. We could, but if there are others involved, removing these 2 might trigger contingency plans we don't know about. Better to monitor them closely and see what moves they make. You're suggesting we let potential threats remain active inside the palace? I'm suggesting we control the environment and watch what they do. If we pull them now, we learn nothing about who else might be involved or what the actual plan is. Prince William was silent for a moment. How do we monitor without them knowing? I'll assign undercover officers to kitchen and maintenance staff rotations. They'll blend in as temporary workers brought in for the dinner service. We'll have eyes on both targets constantly. And if they make a move, we intercept before any action completes. But we wait long enough to gather evidence and identify accomplices. Prince William's jaw tightened slightly. You're asking me to let my family sit down to dinner while potential assassins work the room. I'm asking you to trust that we can contain this while learning who's really behind it. If we shut it down too early, the people funding this walk away and try again later. The silence stretched between them. Claire didn't push. She knew the weight of what she was asking. How confident are you in your people? Prince William finally asked. Completely? Then proceed. But the moment anything escalates beyond your control, we lock it down. Claire nodded and returned to her office. Within minutes, she had 6 undercover officers being briefed and assigned positions throughout the kitchen and maintenance operations. They would arrive under the guise of additional support staff for the large event, a common occurrence that wouldn't raise suspicion. In a private study on the 3rd floor, Prince Oliver sat beside Victor Hayes. The boy hadn't spoken since returning from the security interview. His eyes stayed fixed on the window overlooking the palace gardens. Did I do the right thing? Oliver asked quietly. Victor chose his words carefully. You reported something that concerned you. That's always the right thing. But what if I was wrong? What if they were just talking about normal work stuff, and I misunderstood? Then we'll know that soon, and everyone will be relieved. But if you were right, you may have saved lives by speaking up when it was hard to do so. Oliver turned to look at him. Are you going to get in trouble for believing me? That's not something you need to worry about. But you broke the rules to tell my father, didn't you? Victor met the boy's gaze. Sometimes protecting people means making difficult choices. Before Oliver could respond, the door opened. Claire Donovan entered and addressed Victor directly. I need you on Prince Oliver's personal detail for the remainder of the day. Stay within sight of him at all times. Victor stood. Understood. Claire looked at the boy. Your father wants you to continue your normal schedule. Attend your afternoon lessons. Have dinner with your family tonight. Act like everything is exactly as it should be. Will my father be safe? We're making sure of it. She left, and Oliver turned back to the window. Victor resumed his position near the door, aware that his role had shifted from palace guard to the last line of defense for a child who had set something irreversible into motion. Across the palace, in the main kitchen, Eric Lawson reviewed the evening's menu with his staff. He spoke calmly about preparation timelines and presentation standards. To anyone watching, he appeared focused and professional. In the maintenance wing, Greg Torres checked electrical panels and lighting systems throughout the dining hall. His movements were efficient, his demeanor unremarkable. Both men worked under the watchful eyes of officers they didn't know existed, while the palace continued its preparations for a dinner that now carried stakes far beyond diplomacy. Eric Lawson moved through the palace kitchen with the confidence of someone who belonged there. He inspected serving platters arranged on steel counters, examined garnish preparations, and consulted with sous chefs about timing for each course. But his hands were steady, his voice remained even. Nothing in his behavior suggested nervousness or guilt. But Officer Nina Grant, posing as a temporary pastry assistant, noticed details others might miss. Eric touched certain serving dishes with unusual care, running his fingers along their edges as if checking for something specific. When a junior chef offered to help him transport covered platters to the cold storage area, Eric declined firmly, insisting he would handle those items personally. Nina made a mental note and continued decorating dessert plates while keeping Eric in her peripheral vision. In the dining hall, Greg Torres stood on a stepladder adjusting chandelier connections. He worked methodically, testing each fixture and making small adjustments to wiring. The head butler passed by twice without giving him a second glance. Maintenance work before major events was routine. Officer Daniel Reeves, dressed in maintenance coveralls and carrying a toolkit, worked on wall sconces 20 feet away. He watched Greg's reflection in the polished silver serving cart positioned near the entrance. Greg's movements were practiced, but he lingered near security camera positions longer than necessary. He angled his body to block the camera's view while his hands worked on electrical panels that controlled more than just lighting. Daniel pretended to test a sconce switch while photographing Greg's work with a camera concealed in his toolkit. In Claire Donovan's office, preliminary background reports arrived. She read through financial records first. Eric Lawson's bank account showed 3 deposits over the past month, each for $15,000. The transfers came from an offshore account registered to a shell corporation with no clear ownership trail. His spending patterns hadn't changed dramatically, but the money sat untouched in his savings account as if waiting for something. Greg Torres's financials were cleaner on the surface, but deeper analysis revealed connections that raised questions. His cousin, Rafael Torres, had served prison time for conspiracy to commit fraud and had known associations with international crime networks. Greg had visited Rafael twice in the past year, trips he hadn't disclosed on his palace employment application.
Claire picked up her phone and called Prince William.
We have probable cause. Eric received $45,000 from an untraceable source over the past month. Greg has undisclosed family connections to organized crime. Neither piece proves intent, but combined with Prince Oliver's information, the pattern is clear. What's your recommendation? Prince William asked. We continue surveillance until they make a definitive move. Both men are being watched constantly. The moment either one does something actionable, we take them. How long until the dinner service begins? Claire checked her watch. 4 hours. Keep me updated every 30 minutes. She ended the call and reviewed security camera feeds from multiple angles. The kitchen showed normal activity. The dining hall looked pristine and ready. Everything appeared exactly as it should for a state dinner hosting 47 international guests. But beneath the surface, tension coiled like a spring. In a classroom on the palace's second floor, Prince Oliver sat through his afternoon history lesson. His tutor discussed the formation of parliamentary systems while the boy stared at his textbook without reading the words. Victor Hayes stood outside the classroom door, visible through the window, his presence both reassuring and ominous. Oliver's mind kept replaying the conversation he'd overheard. The voices, the words about timing and distractions. He wondered if he'd remembered everything correctly, if he'd made the right choice to speak up, if his father would actually be safe tonight. The tutor noticed his distraction. Your Highness, can you tell me which event led to the signing of the Magna Carta? Oliver blinked and refocused. The Baron's revolt against King John. Correct. And what principle did it establish? That even the king is subject to the law. The tutor nodded approvingly and continued the lesson. Oliver forced himself to pay attention, trying to follow his father's instruction to act normal even though nothing felt normal anymore. Back in the kitchen, Eric Lawson stepped into the cold storage room alone. He closed the door behind him and moved to a shelf containing specialty ingredients for the evening's second course. His hand reached behind a container of imported truffles and retrieved a small glass vial no larger than his thumb. The liquid inside was clear and odorless. He held it up to the light, examining it carefully, then slipped it into the inner pocket of his chef's coat. Nina Grant watched through the small window in the storage room door. She photographed the action with her phone and immediately sent the image to Claire Donovan with a two-word message: "He's armed." Claire received the photo and enlarged it. She couldn't identify the substance from the image alone, but the secrecy with which Eric handled it told her everything she needed to know. She forwarded the photo to the Palace medical team, with instructions to prepare counteragents for common toxins and poisons. Then she sent a message to all undercover officers: "Subjects are now active threats. Maintain surveillance, but prepare for immediate intervention on my signal." In the maintenance corridor, Greg Torres finished his work on the dining hall electrical panel and moved toward a secondary security junction near the kitchen entrance. This panel controlled camera feeds for 3 critical hallways and the main service entrance. He opened the panel cover and examined the wiring inside. Daniel Reeves positioned himself at the corridor intersection with a clear view of Greg's work. He spoke quietly into his radio. "Target 2 is accessing security camera controls. Possible sabotage in progress." Claire's voice came through his earpiece. "Do not intervene yet. Document everything." Greg pulled a small timing device from his pocket. It was no larger than a matchbox, with a digital display showing numbers that could be set to specific intervals. He attached it to the camera control board using magnetic clips, then programmed a sequence into the device. His fingers moved quickly, entering codes with practiced familiarity. Daniel photographed the entire process. When Greg closed the panel and walked away, Daniel waited 30 seconds before approaching the junction himself. He opened the panel, photographed the timing device up close, and sent the images to Claire. She analyzed them immediately. The device was set to disable cameras in 3 specific zones at 8:45 p.m., exactly 15 minutes after the state dinner's main course would be served. The cameras would remain offline for 6 minutes before automatically resetting. Claire stood and walked directly to Prince William's private office. She didn't knock. She entered and closed the door behind her. "We have confirmation. Eric is carrying an unidentified substance concealed in his coat." Greg installed a timer on security cameras set to disable coverage during dinner service. Both actions indicate coordinated planning. Prince William set down the briefing papers he'd been reviewing. Timeline? The camera disruption is programmed for 8:45. That gives us our window. We move on both targets simultaneously before that time hits. How do you want to proceed? Let them continue until they commit to the final step. The moment Eric moves toward the serving line or Greg attempts any additional sabotage, we take them both. Prince William's expression hardened. "And if something goes wrong?" "It won't. But if it does, we have medical teams standing by and alternative security protocols ready to activate instantly." He studied her face for a long moment. "You're certain?" "Yes." "Then finish this." The palace kitchen intensified its rhythm as the dinner hour approached. Chefs plated appetizers with precision while servers rehearsed their choreography through the dining hall. Steam rose from pots. Orders were called across stations. The controlled chaos of high-level service unfolded exactly as it should. Eric Lawson supervised the preparation of the main course, a roasted lamb dish with herb reduction sauce. He moved between stations, tasting, adjusting seasoning, ensuring every element met exacting standards. His demeanor remained calm, almost serene, as if the vial hidden in his coat pocket didn't exist. Mina Grant worked 3 feet away, arranging dessert components on silver trays. She kept Eric in constant view while appearing focused entirely on her task. 2 other undercover officers positioned themselves at strategic points throughout the kitchen, disguised as line cooks and dishwashers. All 3 wore concealed earpieces connected to Claire Donovan's command frequency. Claire sat in the Security Operations Center watching multiple camera feeds simultaneously. One screen showed the kitchen. Another displayed the dining hall, where guests were beginning to arrive. A third monitored the corridor where Greg Torres had installed the timing device. She spoke quietly into her microphone. All units confirmed positions. 5 voices responded in sequence, each confirming readiness. In the dining hall, Prince William greeted ambassadors and dignitaries with practiced warmth. His posture was relaxed, his conversation engaging, but his awareness extended beyond the pleasantries. He knew exactly where each security officer stood. He tracked the movement of servers and staff with peripheral attention honed over years of public life. His wife stood beside him, gracious and composed, unaware of the operation unfolding around her. Prince Oliver remained upstairs in the family quarters under Victor Hayes's watch, forbidden from attending the dinner despite his usual presence at such events. The boy had accepted the decision without argument, understanding that his role in preventing tonight's threat meant staying away from it. In the kitchen, Eric lifted the first platter of lamb preparations and carried it toward the serving staging area. He set it down carefully, then returned for a second platter. On his third trip, his hand moved inside his coat. Nina's voice came through the secure channel. Target 1 reaching for concealed item. Claire leaned forward in her chair. Hold position. Let him commit. Eric's fingers closed around the vial. He pulled it out slowly, shielding the movement with his body while positioning himself between two prep stations. His other hand reached for a gravy boat filled with the herb reduction sauce meant to accompany the lamb. He unscrewed the vial cap with practiced efficiency. He's opening it, Nina transmitted. Claire's hand hovered over the alert button. Wait. Eric tilted the vial toward the gravy boat. Clear liquid began to pour into the dark sauce. Now, Claire commanded. 3 officers converged on Eric simultaneously. Nina grabbed his wrist, forcing the vial upward before more than a few drops entered the sauce. The 2 male officers seized his arms from both sides, locking him in place. The vial fell from his grip and shattered on the tile floor. The kitchen froze. Chefs and staff stared in shock as Eric was pushed face first against the prep counter. Nina pulled zip ties from her pocket and secured his wrists behind his back. Kitchen supervisor compromised, she reported calmly. Substance partially deployed. Contaminated gravy boat secured. In the maintenance corridor, Daniel Reeves received the go signal and moved toward Greg Torres, who was walking toward the dining hall with a toolbox. Daniel quickened his pace, closing the distance. Greg Torres, stop where you are. Greg turned, confused for only a second. Before his expression shifted to calculation, he dropped the toolbox and ran. Daniel sprinted after him, calling for backup. Greg turned a corner into a service hallway, moving fast but without panic. He knew the palace layout well, too well. Another officer appeared at the far end of the corridor, blocking the exit. Greg reversed direction, but Daniel was already there. The 2 officers tackled him simultaneously, driving him to the ground. Greg struggled briefly before Daniel's knee pressed into his back and handcuffs clicked around his wrists. Target 2 secured, Daniel transmitted. In the Security Operations Center, Claire watched both arrests unfold on separate screens. She picked up her phone and called the palace medical team. We have a potential toxin deployed in the kitchen. I'm sending someone to retrieve the contaminated container now. I need immediate analysis. She switched channels and addressed the undercover officers in the kitchen. Clear that prep station. Nobody touches anything until hazmat arrives. Pull all serving dishes that came within 5 feet of the contaminated sauce. Nina coordinated the lockdown while regular kitchen staff stood bewildered and frightened. The head chef demanded explanations. Nina ignored him and continued securing the area. Within 3 minutes, 2 medical personnel and protective equipment entered the kitchen and carefully collected the gravy boat and the broken vial fragments. They sealed everything in hazard containers and rushed them to the palace laboratory. In the dining hall, Prince William received a discreet signal from a security officer positioned near the entrance. He excused himself from conversation and walked to a private alcove. His phone buzzed with a text from Claire. Both subjects in custody. Contamination contained. Dinner delayed 15 minutes for safety verification. He returned to the dining hall and approached the event coordinator. We need a brief delay. Technical issue with the kitchen equipment. Inform the guests we'll begin service in 15 minutes. The coordinator nodded and made the announcement with diplomatic smoothness. Guests continued mingling, unaware that the delay had nothing to do with equipment. In separate interrogation rooms deep within the palace security wing, Eric Lawson and Greg Torres sat handcuffed to chairs. Neither had spoken since their arrests. Eric stared at the table in front of him with flat eyes. Greg's leg bounced nervously, his jaw clenched tight. Claire entered Eric's room first. She sat across from him and placed a tablet on the table, displaying photographs of the vial, the contaminated sauce, and Eric's financial records showing the mysterious deposits. We found the toxin, she said quietly. We have footage of you deploying it. We have evidence of payment. You're facing attempted murder charges that will put you in prison for the rest of your life. Eric said nothing, But if you cooperate now, if you tell me who paid you and what the full plan was, the prosecutor will hear about it." Eric's eyes flicked to the photographs, then away. His silence continued. Claire stood. "You have 10 minutes to decide whether you want to help yourself or protect people who abandoned you the moment you got caught." She left the room and entered Greg's interrogation space. He looked up when she entered, fear visible beneath his attempt at composure. "Eric's already talking," Claire lied smoothly. "He's telling us everything, which means whatever deal was available, he's getting it. You're just the accomplice now." Greg's legs stopped bouncing. "I didn't know anyone was going to get hurt." Claire sat down slowly. "Tell me what you did know." "I was just supposed to disable the cameras, that's all. I thought it was about stealing something. Art or jewelry. I needed the money. My cousin said it was easy work. No one gets hurt." "Your cousin Raphael set this up?" Greg hesitated, then nodded. "He connected me with someone. I never met them. Everything was through encrypted messages." "What were you paid?" $20,000. Half up front, half after tonight." Claire made notes on her tablet. "What about Eric? Did you know what he was doing?" "No, I swear. I just knew someone else had another part of the job. I didn't know it involved poison or anything like that." Claire studied him. His fear seemed genuine, but fear didn't equal innocence. "The timer you installed. What time were the cameras supposed to go offline?" 8:45, for 6 minutes. "Why that specific window?" "I don't know. Those were the instructions I got." Claire left him and returned to Eric's room. The man still sat in silence, but something in his posture had shifted. His shoulders had dropped slightly. She sat down again. "Greg just told me everything. About Raphael. About the encrypted messages. About the $20,000. Eric's jaw tightened, but he didn't look up. "I know you got more than 20,000, Claire continued. 45,000 across 3 payments. That means you weren't just muscle. You were critical to whatever this was." Eric's breathing changed, became shallower. "The toxin you were about to use, laboratory analysis will tell us exactly what it is within the hour. But you can save us time and save yourself worse charges by telling me now. What was it and who was the target?" Eric's hands, cuffed in front of him, clenched into fists. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough. "It was ricin derivative, modified for faster action, tasteless, undetectable in rich sauces." "Who was the target?" "The royal family table, specifically the dishes served to Prince William and his wife." Claire felt cold clarity settle over her. "Who paid you?" Eric shook his head. "I never met them. Contact was always through an intermediary. Different person each time. Different locations. But you have a way to reach them." "Had. The last contact number stopped working 2 days ago." "What were you supposed to do after deployment?" "Leave through the service exit at 8:50. There'd be a car waiting." "New identity papers. Passage to South America." "And you believe that?" Eric finally looked at her. "I didn't care. The money was real. That was enough." Claire stood. "You just confessed to attempted assassination of members of the royal family. Whatever deal you thought you had, it's gone. You'll spend the rest of your life in a maximum security facility." She left both men under guard and returned to the operations center. "She called Prince William immediately," Eric confessed. "The toxin was a modified ricin derivative intended for you and your wife. Greg was supposed to create a blind spot in camera coverage for the escape. Both were hired through intermediaries connected to Greg's cousin, Raphael, who has ties to international crime networks." Prince William was quiet for a moment. "Is the dining hall secure?" "Completely. All food has been cleared and replaced. The contaminated material is contained. You can proceed with the dinner." "And my son?" "He saved your life." The state dinner proceeded with flawless precision. Guests enjoyed courses prepared by vetted staff under intensified security oversight. Conversation flowed around tables adorned with crystal and silver. Diplomats discussed trade agreements and cultural exchanges, while violinists played softly in the corner. To everyone present, the evening unfolded exactly as planned. Prince William moved through the room with characteristic grace, pausing at each table to exchange words with guests. His focus appeared complete, his attention undivided. But beneath the practiced exterior, his mind calculated the proximity of how close catastrophe had come. Hours ago, the lamb course sitting before these guests had nearly contained a substance designed to kill him and his wife. The timing Greg had programmed would have created the perfect window for Eric to slip away unnoticed while chaos erupted. One child's bravery had prevented it all. In the family quarters 3 floors above, Prince Oliver sat on the edge of his bed, still dressed in formal clothes he'd put on expecting to attend the dinner. Victor Hayes stood near the window, maintaining his assigned post, despite the threat having been neutralized. The boy hadn't asked why he couldn't join the event. He understood that his involvement made his presence there impossible. "Is it over?" Oliver asked quietly. Victor turned from the window. "The immediate threat has been stopped, but there are still people out there who wanted to hurt my father." "Yes." Oliver processed this. "Will they try again?" "Security is working to identify everyone involved. The 2 men who were arrested are providing information that will help find the others. What happens to them now? The men who tried to do it? They'll face trial and imprisonment." Oliver looked at his hands. "I keep thinking about what would have happened if I hadn't said anything, if I'd just gone back to bed." Victor moved closer and sat in the chair beside the bed. "But you didn't. You made a hard choice when it mattered most. I was scared you wouldn't believe me, that everyone would think I was making it up or being dramatic. Fear of not being believed stops many people from speaking up. You pushed through that fear. That's courage." The boy's eyes were wet, but he didn't cry. "My father could have died tonight, but he didn't, because of you." They sat in silence while the dinner continued below. Eventually, Oliver's mother arrived to take him to bed. She thanked Victor and guided her son toward his bedroom, still unaware of how close she'd come to losing her husband. Victor resumed his post, knowing his role in the day's events would be documented in classified reports that few would ever read. In the security wing's interrogation area, Claire Donovan sat across from a computer screen displaying financial records, encrypted message logs, and connection maps linking Rafael Torres to known criminal organizations. The evidence painted a picture of a sophisticated operation with resources and planning that extended far beyond 2 hired palace workers. Her deputy entered carrying a preliminary forensic report. Laboratory confirmed Eric's confession. Modified ricin derivative, extremely potent. Even small amounts would have been lethal within hours. Symptoms would have mimicked natural causes initially, making immediate diagnosis difficult. Claire read through the technical analysis. How quickly would it have acted? First symptoms within 2 hours. Full system failure within 6 to 8 hours. By the time medical teams identified the cause, treatment options would have been limited. So they planned for the deaths to occur after the dinner ended, after Eric and Greg were long gone. Exactly. No immediate connection between the event and the outcome. Claire closed the report. "Pull everything we have on Rafael Torres. I want his known associates, financial connections, travel patterns for the past 2 years. This wasn't his operation. He was a facilitator. Someone with significant resources funded this. International Task Force? Coordinate with Interpol and MI6. This crosses borders. We need to identify who wanted the prince dead badly enough to invest this kind of planning and money." Her deputy had left to begin the expanded investigation. Claire remained at her desk reviewing the timeline of events. A child overhearing conversation. A guard breaking protocol. A decision to trust instinct over procedure. Any one of those elements missing, and the outcome would have been catastrophic. The dinner concluded near midnight. Guests departed with warm farewells and promises to continue conversations at future gatherings. Prince William stood at the entrance making final goodbyes, his public mask firmly in place. When the last guest left, he walked directly to the Security Operations Center. Claire stood when he entered. "Your Highness, I want to see them." She understood immediately who he meant. "That's not advisable. They're being held for transfer to formal custody. I didn't ask for advice. I want to see the men who tried to murder my wife and me." Claire led him through secure corridors to the detention area. She stopped outside Eric Lawson's holding cell. Prince William looked through the reinforced window at the man sitting motionless on a metal bench. Eric sensed the observation and looked up. His eyes met Prince William's through the glass. Neither man spoke, but something passed between them. Eric saw the target he'd been paid to kill standing alive and aware. Prince William saw someone who had valued money over human life. After a long moment, Prince William turned away. I want daily updates on the investigation. Every connection, every lead, every person involved. You'll have them. They walked back through the corridors in silence. At the operations center entrance, Prince William stopped. "Where is the guard who brought this to my attention?" "Victor Hayes. He assigned to Prince Oliver's personal detail currently. I want to speak with him, and I want to see my son." Claire made the arrangements. Within 15 minutes, Prince William entered the family quarters where Oliver had finally fallen asleep. Victor stood from his chair as the prince approached. They stepped into the hallway to speak privately. "You broke protocol today," Prince William said quietly. "Yes, Your Highness. Standard procedure would have been to report through your chain of command." "Yes, Your Highness. That process would have taken hours, maybe too long." Victor said nothing. "You made a judgment call based on incomplete information from a child. You risked your career on that call." "I did?" Prince William studied the guard's face. "Why?" "Because Prince Oliver's fear was genuine. Because the details he provided were too specific to dismiss, and because waiting might have cost lives. You trusted your instincts over established protocol?" "In that moment, yes." Prince William extended his hand. Victor hesitated, then shook it. "Thank you for protecting my family," the prince said. "Your judgment and quick action prevented a tragedy. That won't be forgotten." Victor nodded, unsure how to respond to gratitude from someone he'd sworn to protect. Prince William released his hand and entered Oliver's bedroom. He sat on the edge of his son's bed and watched the boy sleep. Oliver's face was peaceful now, the tension of the day released in rest. The prince stayed there for a long time, thinking about how close he'd come to never seeing his son grow up, about the conspiracy still being unraveled by investigators, about the reality that threats could come from anywhere, even from people granted trust and access within palace walls. But mostly he thought about an 8-year-old boy who heard something wrong and chose to speak despite being afraid, who trusted a guard enough to share what he knew, who set in motion the sequence of events that saved lives. Prince William leaned down and kissed his son's forehead gently, careful not to wake him. "You did well," he whispered. "So very well." The morning after the state dinner arrived with gray skies and steady rain. Victor Hayes reported to his regular post at dawn, expecting reassignment or formal inquiry into his breach of protocol. Instead, he found Claire Donovan waiting for him in the security wing's briefing room. She gestured for him to sit. "Your actions yesterday are being formally recognized in your personnel file. The protocol violation has been noted and simultaneously dismissed, given the circumstances and outcome." Victor absorbed this information without visible reaction. "You'll remain assigned to Prince Oliver's personal detail for the foreseeable future," Claire continued. "The family specifically requested you." "Understood. There's something else." She slid a folder across the table. "This stays between us for now. The investigation into who funded the assassination attempt has expanded significantly." Victor opened the folder and scanned the documents inside. Financial transactions traced through 7 different countries, shell corporations with deliberately obscured ownership, communications routed through encrypted networks designed to hide origin points. The operation's sophistication suggested resources far beyond ordinary criminal enterprise. "Rafael Torres gave us names of 2 intermediaries he worked with," Claire explained. "Both are ghosts. No verifiable identities, no digital footprints beyond the specific interactions with Rafael. They were careful. Professional. What does that tell you? That we're dealing with an organization, not individuals. Someone with significant reach wanted Prince William eliminated. We're working with international intelligence agencies to identify who and why." Victor closed the folder. "How much danger is the family still in?" "Unknown. The immediate threat is contained, but whoever financed this operation is still active. They invested substantial resources. They might consider this a setback rather than a failure. So we assume they'll try again. We prepare as if they will, while working to identify and stop them before they can. Victor stood to leave, but Claire's voice stopped him. Hayes, you made the right call. Not everyone would have. Remember that when the bureaucracy tries to make you second-guess yourself. He nodded and left the briefing room. His first assignment of the day was escorting Prince Oliver to morning lessons. The boy was already waiting in the hallway when Victor arrived, dressed in school uniform, his backpack slung over one shoulder. "Good morning, Your Highness." "Good morning." Oliver started walking toward the classroom wing, then stopped. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "My father came to see me last night after the dinner. He said I did well. But I didn't really do anything except tell you what I heard. That was exactly what you needed to do. But you're the one who made the decision to tell him. You're the one who broke the rules." Victor considered how to respond. "We both made choices yesterday. You chose to speak up when staying silent would have been easier. I chose to act on what you told me. Both choices mattered. Will things go back to normal now? What does normal mean to you?" Oliver thought about this. "Before yesterday, I never really thought about people wanting to hurt my family. I knew security was important, but it felt like something in the background. Now I can't stop thinking about it. That awareness might feel uncomfortable, but it's not a bad thing. Understanding that threats exist helps you make better decisions about your own safety." They reached the classroom. Oliver's tutor was already arranging materials on the desk inside. The boy hesitated at the door. "Victor, thank you for believing me. You gave me reason to believe you." Oliver entered the classroom, and Victor took his position outside. Through the window, he watched the boy settle into his chair and open a textbook. The tutor began the day's lesson on European history, completely unaware of the history Prince Oliver had helped prevent the night before. Across the palace grounds, in a nondescript office building used for administrative functions, Prince William sat in a secure conference room with Claire Donovan and 3 intelligence officers from different agencies. Documents and photographs covered the table. Digital displays showed network maps and communication patterns. "The financial trail goes cold in the Cayman Islands," one officer explained, pointing to a transaction chain on the screen. "The final account that paid Rafael Torres connects to a corporation registered there, but the actual ownership is buried under 7 layers of subsidiary companies. Can we pierce that?" Prince William asked. "We're working on it, but it requires international cooperation and legal processes that take time. Weeks, possibly months." Another officer added, "We've identified a pattern, though. Similar financial structures have been linked to 3 other attempted political assassinations in the past 4 years. Different targets, different countries, but the same sophisticated money laundering approach." "You're saying this is an organization that specializes in political killings? Or a network that provides services to those who want them?" "We believe they operate like a business. Clients pay for specific outcomes. The network handles planning, recruitment, and execution." Prince William leaned back in his chair. "What's the common factor between the targets?" "Still analyzing that. The previous attempts involved a European Parliament member, a Middle Eastern diplomat, and a South American judge. All 3 survived because the plots were discovered before completion, similar to your situation. So they have a failure rate. Everyone does. But they also have enough successes that they remain operational and continue attracting clients." Claire interjected, "The question we need to answer is, why you specifically? What would someone gain from your death?" Prince William had already been considering this. Political instability, succession questions, public sympathy that could be leveraged, international incidents if the assassination were blamed on a foreign actor. The possibilities are extensive. We're examining recent diplomatic tensions, trade negotiations, policy decisions. Worries are anything that might have created enemies with sufficient motivation and resources. The meeting continued for 2 hours, producing more questions than answers. When it concluded, Prince William returned to his private office and sat alone with his thoughts. Someone wanted him dead enough to pay professionals. That person remained free and unidentified. His family remained vulnerable, despite enhanced security. He picked up his phone and called his wife. "Can you bring Oliver to my office?" They arrived 15 minutes later. Prince William's wife looked concerned, sensing the seriousness in her husband's tone. Oliver appeared cautious, uncertain why he'd been summoned. Prince William closed the door and gestured for them to sit. I want to tell you both something important. Yesterday, we prevented a serious threat to our family. I want you to understand what happened." His wife's expression shifted to alarm. "What kind of threat?" "Two palace employees planned to poison the food served at last night's dinner. They intended to kill me and you. They were hired by people we haven't identified yet. The plot was discovered because Oliver overheard them discussing their plans and reported it." She looked at their son with a mixture of shock and pride. "You knew about this yesterday?" Oliver nodded. "I heard them talking late at night. I told Victor, and he told Father." "Why didn't anyone tell me?" "Because we needed everything to appear normal," Prince William explained. "If you'd known, your behavior might have changed in ways that could alert the conspirators. I made the decision to keep you unaware." Her hands trembled slightly. "We could have died, but we didn't, because our son was brave enough to report something that frightened him, and because people acted on that information quickly and effectively. See Purchase Sequel." She pulled Oliver close, holding him tightly. The boy didn't resist. Seeming to understand she needed the contact, Prince William continued, "The men responsible are in custody, but the people who hired them are still out there. Security has been enhanced throughout the palace. You'll both notice increased protective measures. I need you to follow all security protocols without question." "For how long?" she asked. "Until we identify and neutralize the threat completely." Oliver spoke quietly. "Are we safe now?" Prince William chose honesty over comfort. "We're safer than we were yesterday. People are working constantly to protect us. But I won't lie to you and say there's no danger. That's why we have security. That's why we follow protocols. That's why speaking up when something seems wrong is so important." His wife wiped her eyes. "What can we do?" "Be aware. Trust your instincts. Report anything unusual, and understand that the security measures in place exist for good reasons." They sat together as a family, processing the reality of how close they'd come to tragedy and the ongoing uncertainty of threats that remained unseen but very real. Later that afternoon, Victor received an envelope delivered by Palace Courier. Inside was a handwritten note on cream-colored stationery. The handwriting was careful and deliberate, clearly written by a child still mastering penmanship. "Dear Victor, thank you for believing me when I told you something scary. You were brave to break the rules to keep my father safe. I know you could have gotten in trouble. I hope you didn't. My father says you're going to stay as my guard. I'm glad. You make me feel safe. Your friend, Oliver." Victor read the note twice, then folded it carefully and placed it in the inner pocket of his uniform jacket, next to his badge and identification. He'd carried those items for 11 years. Now he carried something else, a reminder that sometimes the most important moments require breaking from procedure and trusting what instinct and observation reveal. The palace continued its daily operations around him. Staff moved through corridors, security rotations changed. Diplomats arrived for scheduled meetings. Everything appeared normal, functioning according to established patterns. But beneath that surface, people remained vigilant. Investigators pursued leads across continents. Security analyzed every new employee, every delivery, every access point. The family adapted to new protocols with the understanding that their lives depended on constant awareness. And in the family quarters, Prince Oliver prepared for bed with his mother, reading to him from a book about explorers who faced unknown dangers with courage. Victor stood outside the door, listening to her voice and the boy's occasional questions, knowing that the greatest danger had been averted, but that vigilance could never stop. The palace lights dimmed as night settled over the grounds. Rain continued falling steadily, washing clean the stones and windows. Inside, people slept or worked or worried. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and continued investigation. But tonight, the family was safe. A plot had been stopped. Justice was being pursued, and one child had learned that his voice mattered, that speaking up could change everything, and that courage wasn't the absence of fear, but the decision to act, despite it. 3 weeks passed since the attempted assassination. The palace maintained heightened security protocols while life gradually returned to familiar rhythms. Prince Oliver attended lessons, participated in official events when required, and grew accustomed to Victor's constant presence. The initial tension faded into routine. though the boy's awareness of danger never fully disappeared. In the Security Operations Center, Claire Donovan's investigation had produced substantial progress. International cooperation yielded breakthrough intelligence that connected the assassination network to a series of offshore accounts controlled by a single coordinating entity. The organization operated under the name Meridian Solutions, presenting itself publicly as a risk management consultancy while functioning privately as a contract killing service for wealthy clients. Claire sat across from Prince William in his private office, presenting the latest findings. We've identified 12 confirmed operations attributed to Meridian over the past 6 years. Your case was the 4th failed attempt. 8 succeeded. Who are the victims? Politicians, business leaders, journalists. All people whose deaths benefited specific powerful interests. In some cases, we can trace who likely hired them. In others, the client remains hidden. And in my case, Claire hesitated before answering. We have a theory. 3 months ago, you publicly supported new international regulations on rare earth mineral mining. Those regulations threaten significant profits for corporations operating in unregulated territories. You're suggesting a mining company hired assassins? Not directly, but someone connected to those interests might have. We're investigating several executives with both motive and resources. The challenge is proving connection to Meridian. Prince William processed this. So my stance on environmental policy made me a target. Possibly. We're still gathering evidence. What happens to Eric Lawson and Greg Torres? They've been formally charged. Eric faces life imprisonment without parole. Greg is cooperating fully and may receive a reduced sentence. Both provided detailed testimony about how they were recruited and paid. That testimony strengthens our case against the intermediaries we've identified. Have you arrested the intermediaries? One of them, Rafael Torres, was taken into custody 2 weeks ago. He's also cooperating in exchange for consideration at sentencing. The second intermediary disappeared before we could locate him. We believe Meridian eliminated him to prevent additional exposure. Prince William stood and walked to the window overlooking the palace gardens. Rain from earlier had cleared, leaving everything wet and gleaming. How do we stop an organization like this? We continue building the case until we have enough evidence to act internationally. Meridian operates across borders, which means we need coordinated action from multiple governments. That takes time. Meanwhile, they continue operating. Yes. But we've disrupted their network significantly. Raphael's arrest exposed communication channels and payment systems. They'll need to rebuild parts of their infrastructure, which creates vulnerability. Prince William turned back to face her. I want updates twice weekly until this is resolved completely. You'll have them. After Claire left, Prince William remained at the window thinking about the complexity of threats in the modern world. Simple security measures couldn't protect against well-funded organizations with international reach. Every public statement, every policy position, every decision carried potential consequences he couldn't fully anticipate. His phone buzzed with a message from his wife. Oliver had asked to speak with both parents together. Prince William walked to the family quarters where he found his son sitting with his mother in the informal living area. "What did you want to discuss?" Prince William asked, settling into a chair. Oliver looked nervous but determined. "I've been thinking about what happened, about how I overheard those men planning to hurt you." "Go on. Everyone keeps saying I was brave." "But I don't feel brave. I feel like I just got lucky hearing them, and lucky that Victor believed me." Prince William's wife reached for Oliver's hand. "Bravery isn't about feeling confident. It's about doing what's right, even when you're frightened." "But that's the thing," Oliver continued. "I keep wondering what would have happened if I hadn't woken up that night, or if I'd heard them but decided it was none of my business, or if I'd been too scared to tell anyone." "Those are natural thoughts," Prince William said, "but you can't spend your life focused on alternate possibilities. You made the choice you made. That's what matters." "I want to understand something, though. Why did those men want to hurt you? What did you do to them?" Prince William exchanged a glance with his wife before answering. "I didn't do anything to them personally. They were hired by people who disagreed with decisions I've made or positions I've taken. Sometimes when you stand for something important, you create enemies." "That doesn't seem fair." "It isn't. But fairness and reality don't always align. Oliver absorbed this quietly. Will there be other people who want to hurt our family? Possibly. That's why we have security. That's why we're careful about who has access to us and where we go. So we'll never really be completely safe? Prince William chose his words carefully. Complete safety doesn't exist for anyone, regardless of their position. But we take precautions that make us as safe as reasonably possible, and we don't let fear of danger prevent us from living meaningful lives. Oliver nodded slowly, processing the reality of their circumstances. I'm glad Victor is staying as my guard. So are we, his mother added. The conversation shifted to lighter topics, but the underlying tension remained. Oliver had lost some innocence through his experience. We meant we were friends. He understood now that his family existed in a world where people might wish them harm for reasons having nothing to do with personal conflict. That knowledge would shape how he viewed his role and responsibilities going forward. Downstairs, Victor Hayes completed his shift rotation and prepared to hand off to the night security detail. As he gathered his belongings, Claire Donovan approached him in the security wing corridor. I wanted to update you personally, she said. The investigation has made significant progress. We've identified the organization behind the assassination attempt and arrested several people connected to it. Does that mean the threat is over? Not entirely, but it's substantially reduced. The family remains under enhanced protection, and you'll continue as Prince Oliver's primary detail. Understood. Claire studied him for a moment. You've handled the aftermath well. Not everyone processes high-stress situations as effectively. I did what the situation required. That's exactly why you're still here. Most people either second-guess their actions endlessly or become overconfident. You found balance. Victor appreciated the observation but didn't know how to respond. Claire seemed to understand and simply nodded before walking away. He left the palace through the security exit and drove home through London streets still damp from afternoon rain. His apartment was small and orderly, furnished with practical efficiency rather than comfort. He'd lived there for 8 years without ever feeling the need to personalize it significantly. He made dinner, ate while reading intelligence briefings he was cleared to review, then prepared for bed. Before sleeping, he retrieved Oliver's note from his uniform pocket and read it again. The child's careful handwriting and simple gratitude reminded him why he'd chosen this profession. Rapid head. Protection wasn't about glory or recognition. It was about standing between innocent people and those who would harm them. He placed the note in a drawer with other meaningful items he'd collected over the years. Letters from colleagues, commendations that were never made public, photographs from assignments that had mattered. This note joined them as evidence that his choices had purpose beyond paychecks and duty rosters. The following morning, Victor returned to the palace for another day of watching over a boy who'd shown more courage than most adults would manage. Oliver greeted him with a slight smile before heading to breakfast with his family. Victor took his position nearby, alert and ready, knowing that yesterday's victory didn't guarantee tomorrow's safety. The investigation continued across continents. Authorities worked to dismantle Meridian Solutions piece by piece. Some members of the organization were arrested. Others disappeared into networks designed for exactly that purpose. The client who had funded Prince William's assassination remained unidentified despite extensive efforts. But the palace stood secure. The family adapted to their new reality, and one guard continued his duty with the understanding that he'd made decisions that changed everything, and that he'd make similar decisions again if circumstances required it. Because that was what protection truly meant, not just following orders or maintaining protocols, but recognizing moments when rules mattered less than lives, and having the courage to act accordingly. Prince Oliver grew older with that lesson embedded in his understanding. He'd learned that speaking up mattered, that adults didn't always have answers. That safety was something continuously earned rather than permanently guaranteed. Those lessons would shape the leader he'd eventually become. And Victor Hayes continued standing watch, knowing that some threats would always exist, that vigilance could never stop, and that the price of safety was constant awareness, combined with willingness to act when action was required. The palace lights burned through another night, marking another day when tragedy had been prevented and lives had been preserved through choices made by people who understood that courage sometimes looked like a child whispering urgent words to a guard who chose to believe him. 6 months after the assassination attempt, international law enforcement agencies coordinated simultaneous raids across 4 continents. The operation targeted Meridian Solutions' remaining infrastructure, resulting in 17 arrests, including 3 senior operatives who'd managed the organization's financial networks. Evidence seized during the raids revealed client communications, payment records, and operational details for dozens of contracted killings spanning nearly a decade. Claire Donovan received confirmation of the operation's success while reviewing morning intelligence reports. She immediately requested a meeting with Prince William to brief him on the developments. They met in the secure conference room where months earlier they'd first discussed the expanding investigation. Claire displayed photographs of those arrested alongside organizational charts showing Meridian's structure. "This is the closest we've come to dismantling them completely," she explained. "The financial seizures alone will cripple their ability to operate. We've frozen accounts containing over $200 million across 12 countries. Have you identified who hired them to target me?" Claire pulled up a different document, but still finished. "The evidence points to Conrad Ashford, CEO of Titan Mining Corporation. His company stood to lose billions if the rare earth mineral regulations you supported were implemented. Communications recovered from one of the arrested operatives reference the Windsor problem and payments that align with the timeline of your case. Can you prove Ashford made the hire directly?" "Not yet. He used intermediaries and encrypted channels designed to create plausible deniability. But we have enough to investigate him thoroughly. Financial authorities are examining his accounts and communications. If the connection exists, we'll find it." Prince William studied Ashford's photograph. A man in his 60s, distinguished appearance, photographed at charity galas and corporate events. Someone who moved in similar social circles, who attended some of the same functions. The idea that this person had casually ordered his death felt surreal despite the evidence. What happens now? Ashford is under surveillance but hasn't been arrested. We're building the case carefully. If we move too early, his lawyers will exploit any weakness. If we wait and gather sufficient evidence, we can ensure conviction. How long? Months. Possibly longer. Financial crimes of this complexity take time to prosecute successfully. Prince William nodded slowly. "Keep me informed of progress." "There's something else," Claire added. "One of the arrested operatives offered information in exchange for reduced charges. He claims Meridian maintains contingency plans for high-value targets who survive initial attempts. Essentially, they offer clients the option to retry failed contracts at reduced rates." The implication hung in the air between them. "You're saying they might attempt this again?" "It's possible, though significantly less likely now that their organization is disrupted and under investigation." Enhanced security protocols remain in effect indefinitely. After Claire left, Prince William sat alone, processing the reality that someone he'd likely met socially had paid professionals to kill him over policy disagreements. The civilized veneer of diplomatic circles concealed calculations of violence when financial interests were sufficiently threatened. He thought about Oliver, who'd grown noticeably over the past 6 months. The boy carried himself differently now, with awareness that suggested experience beyond his years. He asked more questions during security briefings, paid closer attention to his surroundings, and understood that the protocols protecting him existed for concrete reasons rather than abstract precaution. That evening, the family gathered for dinner in their private quarters. Prince William watched his son navigate conversation with his mother about upcoming school examinations. Oliver appeared relaxed, laughing at something his mother said, reaching for bread with easy familiarity. The trauma of 6 months ago hadn't broken him. Instead, it had taught him resilience. After dinner, Prince William asked Oliver to walk with him through the palace gardens. Victor Hayes followed at a discreet distance, maintaining security while allowing the conversation privacy. They walked along gravel paths between flowering beds awakening with spring growth. The evening air carried coolness that would fade as summer approached. "I wanted to tell you something," Prince William began. "The investigation into what happened has made significant progress. The people who organized the attempt have been arrested. The person who likely paid for it has been identified." Oliver looked up at his father. "Will he go to prison?" "Eventually, if we can prove his involvement definitively. These things take time. Does that mean we're safe now?" "Safer. But I want you to understand something important. The choices I make as part of my role sometimes create opposition from people with different interests. That opposition occasionally becomes dangerous. This won't be the last time security concerns arise. Oliver walked several steps before responding. I've been thinking about that. About how your decisions affect other people and how some of those people might respond badly. And what have you concluded? That being in our position means accepting risk as part of doing what's right. You could avoid making people angry by never taking positions on anything important. But then your role wouldn't mean anything. Prince William felt pride mixed with sadness that his son had to think about such things at age 8. That's a mature understanding. Victor explained it to me. He said, protection isn't about eliminating all danger, it's about managing risk while still living purposefully. He's right. And he's been a good influence on you. They continued walking as daylight faded into twilight. Victor maintained his position, alert to surroundings, while allowing the conversation to flow naturally. Father, Oliver said quietly, I'm glad you're safe. I'm glad I said something when I did. But I wish none of it had been necessary. So do I. They returned to the residence as stars became visible in the darkening sky. Oliver hugged his father before heading to bed, holding on slightly longer than usual. Prince William recognized the gesture for what it was, reassurance that the person he'd helped save remained present and available. In his quarters, Victor Hayes prepared for the night shift rotation. His role had evolved over the past 6 months from general palace security to specialized protection detail. The responsibility carried weight, but also purpose that transcended routine duty. His phone buzzed with a message from Claire Donovan. New intelligence suggests Meridian's leadership is attempting to rebuild operations in Eastern Europe. Region step conditions. Monitoring continues. Victor acknowledged the message and forwarded it to the night security coordinator. Threats evolved constantly. Vigilance required adaptation rather than complacency. He checked his equipment methodically. Communication devices, emergency protocols, backup systems. Everything functioned as required. He reviewed the night schedule. Oliver would sleep from 9 until 7, with periodic security checks at predetermined intervals. Routine surveillance would continue throughout. Before beginning his patrol, Victor paused at the window overlooking the section of gardens where Prince William and Oliver had walked earlier. The paths were empty now, illuminated by security lighting that created pools of visibility between shadows. He thought about the note Oliver had written him, still preserved in his apartment drawer. The boy's gratitude for being believed, the simple acknowledgement that trust mattered. Victor had made a career of following orders and maintaining protocols. But the moment that defined him hadn't involved either. It had required breaking rules, trusting instinct, and accepting consequences for choices made under pressure with incomplete information. He'd been right, but he could have been wrong. That possibility haunted him occasionally during quiet moments when he considered alternate outcomes. If Oliver had misunderstood the conversation, if the men had been discussing something innocent, if Victor's decision to approach Prince William directly had proven unnecessary and inappropriate. But those alternate realities didn't exist. In the actual timeline, his choice had prevented murder and exposed a dangerous organization. The what-ifs mattered less than the what was. He began his patrol, moving through corridors with practiced efficiency. Other guards nodded as he passed, acknowledging his presence without breaking their own focus. The palace breathed with quiet nighttime rhythm, reduced activity, but heightened awareness. In the Security Operations Center, monitors displayed feeds from hundreds of cameras. Operators watched screens with attention trained through years of experience. 100, they noted movement patterns, identified anomalies, maintained logs that documented every shift. Claire Donovan worked late in her office, reviewing case files related to Conrad Ashford. Financial records spread across multiple screens showed complex transactions designed to obscure money movement. Her team had traced 17 separate payments that aligned with Meridian's fee structure, but proving Ashford's direct knowledge and authorization required establishing intent beyond reasonable doubt. She made notes for the prosecution team, highlighting patterns that suggested coordination rather than coincidence. The case would eventually reach court. When it did, the evidence needed to be overwhelming. Her phone rang. The caller ID showed an international number she recognized, a counterpart in Interpol's Financial Crimes Division. "We've got something," the voice said without preamble. Encrypted communications recovered from the raids include references to Project Windsor. The metadata ties them to servers Ashford's company operates. It's circumstantial, but it's another piece. What's important? Send everything you have. I'll coordinate with our legal team. There's more. One of the arrested operatives is negotiating. He claims he can provide direct testimony linking Ashford to the contract if we offer witness protection and reduced sentencing. How credible is he? Mixed history, but the details he's providing check out against independent evidence. Worth pursuing. Claire ended the call and immediately drafted a briefing for Prince William. The investigation was tightening around Ashford. Justice moved slowly, but it moved. Morning arrived with pale sunlight breaking through clouds. Oliver woke to Victor's quiet knock, signaling the start of another day. The boy dressed in his school uniform and joined his parents for breakfast. Prince William watched his son eat and discuss plans for the day. Oliver mentioned a history examination, a football match during afternoon athletics, and a friend's birthday party the following weekend. Normal childhood concerns mixed with the extraordinary circumstances of his life. "I'll need security clearance for the birthday party," Oliver said matter-of-factly. "James's parents are hosting it at their estate outside London." "I'll have Victor coordinate with their security," Prince William replied. Oliver nodded and continued eating. He'd grown accustomed to these requirements, accepting them as part of his reality, rather than impositions to resist. After breakfast, Victor escorted Oliver to the palace's private education wing. Teachers had been briefed on security protocols months ago and maintained awareness without making Oliver feel constantly watched. The day proceeded normally. Lessons, lunch, athletics. Oliver scored a goal during the football match, celebrated with teammates, then returned to studying before dinner. His life contained both ordinary moments and extraordinary context. That evening, Prince William received Claire's briefing about the investigation's progress. He read through the new evidence linking Conrad Ashford to Project Windsor, understanding that the case was building toward prosecution. He thought about confronting Ashford publicly, using his platform to expose the man who tried to have him killed. But Claire's advice echoed in his mind. Patience produced better outcomes than premature action. So he waited, allowed investigators to build their case, trusted the process despite its frustrating slowness. And he watched his family continue living, protected by people who understood that security required both visible deterrence and invisible vigilance. The threat hadn't disappeared. It had simply changed form, becoming manageable rather than immediate. Victor Hayes stood his post, aware that his decision 6 months ago had rippled outward in ways he couldn't fully measure. He'd saved lives, exposed criminals, changed security protocols, earned trust from a family that depended on his judgment. But mostly, he'd shown a young boy that speaking up mattered, that courage counted, and that sometimes the most important thing anyone could do was simply believe someone who needed to be heard. The palace lights burned through another night. Another day ended safely. Another threat remained contained. And life continued, precarious and precious, protected by choices made in critical moments by people who understood that some responsibilities transcended duty and became something more fundamental, the commitment to stand between innocent lives and those who would end them, regardless of cost or consequence.